This is a video tutorial on photography. This video tutorial was created by the Portuguese partner within the Erasmus plus Pix International European project. This video tutorial is divided within 5 parts, although it will focus on 3 principal themes. First, the introduction to digital photography. Secondly, inside the camera, fundamentals of photography. And thirdly, photo composition rules. Since the 1990s, digital cameras have become more and more common and also more affordable. Because of this, it's now easier than ever to get started with photography. Luckily, you don't need to buy a professional level camera to get good results. The most important factor is the skill of the photographer and the use of lighting, composition, and your camera's settings to take better digital photos, no matter what kind of camera you have. With the digital camera, you can capture memories, you can share your photos online, use it as a scanner, capture data, and start taking photos as a hobby. If you're shopping for a digital camera, the number of choices can be overwhelming. However, if you can narrow your search to a specific price, range, or type of camera, then it may make your choice much easier. In addition, many cameras have special features such as red eye correction and anti-blink, so you may want to think about which features are important to you. There are also many types of digital cameras. For instance, the camera phone. Actually, you may already have one. Many camera phones take very good photos and the convenience can't beat it. You also have point and shoot cameras. This is a compact camera designed to be affordable, convenient, and easy to use. Here you can see the bridge camera. This camera bridges the gap between point and shoot cameras and DSLRs. It's sometimes called a super zoom. On the right hand side you can see a mirrorless interchangeable lens camera. This is a pocket-sized alternative to DSLRs with interchangeable lenses. Finally, we have the DSLR, short for digital single lens reflex. This is a large camera with interchangeable lenses that can take very good high quality photos. Digital cameras often have special features designed to help you take better photos. Depending on what types of photos you want to take, some of these features can be quite useful. Some of these features are red eye correction, sports active child mode, anti-blink, smile detection, blemish reduction, and artistic effects. Keep in mind that higher-end cameras, such as DSLRs, are less likely to have some of these features. For those cameras, you'll have to rely more on your own skill, as well as post-processing with Photoshop or a similar program. For everyday snapshots, the convenience of point-and-shoot cameras often makes them a better choice. Generally, cameras use rechargeable lithium-ion battery packs, although some can use AA batteries. The battery pack is usually included with your camera, but you may want to buy an extra one in case the battery runs out while you're shooting. Make sure to buy a battery pack that is designed to work with your camera. Your camera will also come with a charger you can use with your battery. It's a good idea to recharge the battery overnight so you'll be ready to take the photos the next day. Generally, cameras use rechargeable lithium-ion battery packs, although some can use AA batteries. The battery pack is usually included with your camera, but you may want to buy an extra one in case the battery runs out while you're shooting. Make sure to buy a battery pack that is designed to work with your camera. Your camera will also come with a charger you can use with your battery. It's a good idea to recharge the battery overnight so you'll be ready to take the photos next day. Inside the camera, fundamentals of photography. In order to take a photo, there are many different things your camera needs to take into account, such as focus and exposure. Most of the time, these things will be set automatically by your camera. However, you'll sometimes need to make manual changes to the settings to get the best possible photo. Remember that cameras come in many different shapes and sizes, so the exact buttons and features will vary. Every digital camera has a sensor located behind the lens. The sensor is the part that actually captures the photo, much like the roll of film in a film camera. When you take a photo, the sensor is exposed to light for a fraction of a second or sometimes longer. The total amount of light that is captured is called the exposure. If the exposure isn't just right, your photo can come out too dark or too bright. Focusing. Whenever you take a photo, you'll want your subject to be in focus. This means your subject is sharp and not blurry. Just like the exposure, the focus is handled automatically by the camera. However, your camera may try to focus on another object, which can cause your subject to be out of focus. Your camera's LCD screen has a focus indicator, which is a box that shows what your camera is focusing on. DSLR cameras show the autofocus information in the viewfinder. The shutter button. Most digital cameras have a two-stage shutter button, which means it can either be pressed halfway down or all the way down. When you press it halfway down, your camera will lock in the focus and exposure settings. After a second or so, the camera will beep to indicate that it is ready, and you can then press the shutter button the rest of the way down to take the photo. If you simply press the shutter button down all at once, your camera won't have time to make adjustments. Although your camera is designed to work automatically, there are a few settings you may want to change depending on the situation. There will usually be an icon next to each button, and these icons are the same no matter what brand of camera you have. For instance, you have the flash, the timer, macro mode, exposure compensation, and the zoom. Earlier, we also talked about the importance of getting the right exposure. The exposure is actually controlled by three settings: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. These settings work together to allow you to take photos in many different lighting situations, from bright sunlight to a dimly lit room. Shutter speed is the amount of time the shutter stays open. A slower shutter speed allows the camera to gather more light, while a faster shutter speed allows you to freeze the action and avoid blurry photos. If you are using a tripod, you can use much slower shutter speeds and still take sharp photos as long as your subject isn't moving. Camera lenses have a circular window that controls the amount of light that can reach the sensor, much like your eye's pupil. The size of this window is called the aperture, f-number, or f-stop. The aperture and the shutter speed work together to control how much light gets to the sensor. Digital cameras can also adjust the sensitivity of the sensor, and this is known as the ISO number. This generally means that your camera will use a slower shutter speed and or a wider aperture to gather more light. In the first image, we can see that it was taken with a low ISO number, and the right image was taken with a high ISO number. The image on the right has lower quality and more image noise due to the high ISO number. In any photo you take, you also want your subject to be in focus. However, sometimes you may want the background to be out of focus to give a soft, artistic appearance to the photo. This is known as shallow depth of field. In the second photo, the depth of field is shallow, completely blurring the background. In the last photo, the depth of field is very deep, allowing the flowers and the mountains to be in focus, as well as everything in between. Many cameras also include presets called scene modes, such as sports and portrait. If you don't want to use the scene mode, your camera will still make automatic adjustments to try to make the photo look great. There are no fixed rules in photography, but there are guidelines which can often help you to enhance the impact of your photos. The rule of thirds. Imagine that your image is divided into 9 equal segments by 2 vertical and 2 horizontal lines. The rule of thirds says that you should position the most important elements in your scene along these lines or at the points where they intersect. Doing so will add balance and interest to your photo. Some cameras even offer an option to superimpose a rule of thirds grid over the LCD screen, making it even easier to use. Notice how the building and horizon are aligned along the rule of thirds line. Balancing elements. Placing your main subject off center, as with the rule of thirds, creates a more interesting photo, but it can leave a void in the scene which can make it feel empty. You can achieve a balanced composition and even out of the main subject's visual weight by including another object of less importance to fill the space. Here, the visual weight of the road sign is balanced by the building on the other side of the shot. Leading lines. When we look at a photo, our eye is naturally drawn along lines. By thinking about how you place these leading lines in your composition, you can affect the way we view the image, pulling us into the picture, towards the subject, or on a journey through the scene. There are many different types of lines: straight, diagonal, curvy, zigzag, radial, etc. And each can be used to enhance our photo's composition. The road in this photo draws your eye through the scene. Symmetry and patterns. We are surrounded by symmetry and patterns, both natural and man-made. They can make for very eye-catching compositions, particularly in situations where they are not expected. Another great way to use them is to break the symmetry or pattern in some way, introducing tension and the focal point to the scene. The symmetry of this chapel is broken by the bucket in the bottom right corner. Viewpoint. Before photographing your subject, take time to think about where you will shoot it from. Our viewpoint has a massive impact on the composition of our photo, and as a result it can greatly affect the message that the shot conveys. Rather than just shooting from eye level, consider photographing from high above, down at ground level, from the side, from the back, from a long way away, from very close, up, and so on. The unusual viewpoint chosen here creates an intriguing and slightly abstract photo. Background. How many times have you taken what you thought would be a great shot, only to find that the final image lacks impact because the subject blends into a busy background? The human eye is excellent at distinguishing between different elements in a scene, whereas the camera has a tendency to flatten the foreground and background, and this can often ruin an otherwise great photo. Thankfully, this problem is usually easy to overcome at the time of shooting. Look around for a plain and unobtrusive background and compose your shot so that it doesn't distract or detract from the subject. The plain background in this composition ensures nothing distracts from the subject. Depth. Because photography is a two-dimensional medium, we have to choose our composition carefully to convey the sense of depth that was present in the actual scene. You can create depth in a photo by including objects in the foreground, middle ground, and background. Another useful composition technique is overlapping, where you deliberately partially obscure one object with another. The human eye naturally recognizes these layers and mentally separates them out, creating an image with more depth. Emphasize your scene's depth by including interesting subjects at varying distances from the camera. Framing. The world is full of objects which make perfect natural frames, such as trees, archways, and holes. By placing these around the edge of the composition, you help to isolate the main subject from the outside world. The result is a more focused image which draws your eye naturally to the main point of interest. Here, the surrounding hills form a natural frame, and the piece of wood provides a focal point. Cropping. Often a photo will lack impact because the main subject is so small it becomes lost among the clutter of its surroundings. By cropping tight around the subject, you eliminate the background noise, ensuring the subject gets the viewer's undivided attention. Cut out all unnecessary details to keep the viewer's attention focused on the subject. Experimentation. With the dawn of the digital age in photography, we no longer have to worry about film processing costs or running out of shots. As a result, experimenting with our photos composition has become a real possibility. We can fire off tons of shots and delete the unwanted ones later at absolutely no extra cost. Take advantage of this fact and experiment with your composition. You never know whether an idea will work until you try it. Digital photography allows us to experiment with different compositions until we find the perfect one. In conclusion, photography is far from a science, and as a result of all of the rules regarding it, should be taken with a pinch of salt. If they don't work in your scene, ignore them. If you find a great composition that contradicts them, then go ahead and shoot it anyway. But they can often prove to be spot on and are worth at least considering whenever you're out and about with your camera. Above all, enjoy yourself and take the shot.